Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to talk about the movies. Welcome to episode 23 of The Movie Proposal. I am Skye Jatani. With me is Josh Lindsay.
Hey, everybody.
And Jason Rugg.
Hello.
All right, we're getting into it. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Josh, something old. What do you got?
So this is from the year 2000.
That's not that old.
I know, but that was our cutoff.
I don't know. I think there's got to be a 19 in there.
Well, this movie is so great.
All right, I'll be the judge of that.
It's Christopher Nolan's Memento.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So this is the first Christopher Nolan movie I saw. I think he's done another one prior to that called The Following, which I didn't see. But Guy Pearce,
Yeah.
Carrie-Anne Moss, who's famous for The Matrix.
Right, Trinity.
This is the one where this guy is searching for his wife's killer, but he suffers from short-term memory loss. And so he has to tattoo his body with clues about the killer as he learns them before he forgets them.
Because when he wakes up the next day, he can't remember anything.
Right. So he is remembering everything and relearning everything over again, like every day, over and over and over again.
I saw this years ago, so I don't remember all the details.
I've seen this multiple times. I love it.
I'm trying to remember, like, who's making all the money on these tattoos? Every day he's got to go in and get more tattoos.
No, he makes his own tattoos.
Is he doing it himself?
Yeah. Now, I think he probably hired people to, but in the movie, he's giving himself his own tattoo with the ink and the needle.
And why does it have to be a tattoo? Why can't he just write it in a book?
Post-it note.
Yeah.
Because I think one, it's permanent. And I think he addresses it, right? And if you're willing to tattoo yourself, it's probably for real versus a note you jotted down, right? Because that was kind of the theme. It was like, what could he believe? And first of all, I have to say this movie is told backwards, which is brilliant. Have you seen this movie, Jason?
I've never seen it.
Oh my gosh. Tonight, go out and I own it. You can borrow it. So, but it's told backwards, and he's got all these notes, but he can't really know what to trust or who to trust. So he tattoos himself, and that's the ultimate sign of like, okay, I can believe this.
Yeah. It's a brilliantly told story.
Oh my gosh.
And messed up in many ways. And
my wife hates it, but it's
there's an endorsement.
So I don't know.
It's one of my favorite movies. My wife hates it.
She does. I brought it up to her. She's like, yeah, I didn't like that one.
It's on Netflix.
Is it on Netflix?
Yeah, instant stream.
There you go.
Okay.
Memento. Check it out.
Okay. So my something old has nothing to do with anything else we're talking about today, and I'm risking a little bit because it's a rated R movie from back in the day, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so I can't vouch for everything in here being wholesome. I'm certainly not. It's not.
I don't think Momentum was wholesome.
I know, but I'm just saying all this up front because somebody's going to go, "Oh my gosh, Guy, do you remember there was such and such a scene? How can you endorse this movie?" Okay, 1987, The Lost Boys.
Oh, I've actually never seen it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So long before The Walking Dead and all the vampire movies and all the Twilight garbage, there was The Lost Boys.
Now, who starred in that?
Jason Patric and Corey Haim.
Oh, Haim.
Yeah, Corey Haim. So they're I think they have a single mom. They're the brothers, and they move to Santa Cruz, California, and they start hanging out with all the cool kids and all that. And then it turns out that and Kiefer Sutherland is in it. So Kiefer Sutherland's the bad guy.
He's the main
bad guy. So it turns out that a whole bunch of the teenage boys in this town are actually vampires, and it's just so 80s, and it's funny, and it's a horror movie, and it has one of the best endings ever.
Oh, really?
Like, you got to see it. You just have to see it.
The Lost Boys.
Yeah, The Lost Boys. It's a vampire movie. It's a horror movie.
Which is probably why I've never seen it. I'm not a big vampire movie fan.
I'm not like a huge vampire fan either, but this one's kind of, it's got that 80s thing, and it's a teen drama.
Is it like The Breakfast Club for vampires?
Sort of, only darker.
All right.
I don't know how else to describe it, but I think I have a memory of this movie because my older brother was into these kinds of movies. He was in high school. I was like in middle school, and I don't know how, but he would drag me around to some movies and like sneak me into the theaters because he was responsible for me for some reason. So he had to. And I remember, and this is one, like, I did not like horror movies. It was not my thing, but I really liked this one. It was very entertaining.
I didn't know it was a horror movie. I mean, I knew it was about vampires.
It's vampires. It's not like horror. It's not super gory, but
because I don't think Twilight's horror, right?
No. But
It is to some people.
Well put.
Horrible.
So Corey Haim has figured out, he suspects that these guys are vampires, and he's trying to figure out how to kill them. And, and others are like, no, you're ridiculous. It's not really true. And it turns into it's a good 80s movie.
All right.
It's a classic 80s movie.
Lost Boys.
Okay, on to something new. We saw that you mentioned Christopher Nolan.
Yep.
We saw the new movie Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan, which is a World War II piece. I don't know if you want to give a little background, or if people don't know the historical setting. It's a true story.
It is. And I think Jason sent me the podcast. What's it called?
Stuff You Missed in History class?
Stuff You Missed in History class. And they did a great half-hour recap of what led up to Dunkirk. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, I'd highly recommend listening to that podcast or reading about it. So long story short, it's around 400,000 soldiers end up on this beach, and they're surrounded by the Germans.
They're British soldiers.
Mostly. There's French and there's there's a mixture, but mostly British soldiers. And there's all these reasons that led up to, why are they stuck on this beach, and they're surrounded, and they should have been slaughtered, and just all these things that happen. And so they need to get them off the beach, and it's about their survival, and who comes to rescue them, and how they survive it.
And they're about 25 miles or something across the channel is Great Britain.
Right.
So they're just stuck there. It's almost like Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and then they're stuck at the Red Sea, and Pharaoh's armies are coming at them.
Right. All they got to do is get from here to there.
Right.
But it's impossible. So anyway, so it's just simply about that rescue, that survival. And I think he wrote it and directed it, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
Okay.
So, do you have a proposal?
I do. I didn't write it down. I'm not really sure the best way to say this, but I propose that Dunkirk confirms Christopher Nolan as the best living filmmaker today.
All right. High praise.
Yes.
Okay. My proposal, I have two proposals.
Oh.
One is very closely related to yours.
All right.
Okay, so my first proposal is I propose that Dunkirk proves that Christopher Nolan is constitutionally incapable of telling a linear story.
Amen to that.
And Memento is a great example.
Told it backwards.
So, this story is very convoluted in its way it's told. And I love Christopher Nolan movies. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan. I liked this movie. However, that leads to two critiques. I'll just get the criticism out of the way right away.
All right. Is this your proposal, number two?
Well, it's related to the first one, like that it's non-linear in the storytelling. I love non-linear storytelling. I think it's creative. Sometimes I've done that in my sermons. I just think that's a great... But after I stepped out of Dunkirk, I couldn't really make an argument for why that story could not have been told linearly. Like, he tells it in a very convoluted way, and I'm not sure it needed to be told that. Like, it was clever and creative, but I don't think it added to the maybe I'm wrong.
I disagree, but go ahead.
And here's the second thing, and I think I mentioned this to Jason earlier this week. The soundtrack.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you've seen The Dark Knight, which Christopher Nolan also directed.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Especially at the beginning of that movie.
Yep.
It's the antagonist is the Joker,
right,
who represents chaos and anarchy. And Christopher Nolan very intentionally had a soundtrack put together, or the music, I'm using air quotes on that, it's not really music. But the music for the Joker is this tonal, irritating, weird sound,
drawn out for a long period of time,
right? And it sort of represents chaos and tension and all that, and it works brilliantly.
It does
for the Joker.
Yep.
This entire movie is that soundtrack, and I knew when I heard it right away. I was like, oh, that's totally Christopher Nolan. He's pulling the Joker thing again. It's raising tension and all that, and it works. It works really well at building tension. It never stops. And
it does stop.
Very briefly.
End.
But oh my goodness, I understand why he did it, because the entire movie is this massive, tense escape.
We have to get off the beach.
Right, but it is exhausting.
It is, and which speaks to why the movie's only an hour and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
That was longer than it felt longer
well,
than that.
that was the thing. I remember we're going to go see it. Well, how long is this? And I couldn't believe how short it was, because most movies today, especially like a Christopher Nolan film, is going to be like 2.5 hours or whatever. And I mean, it's succinct. Mm-hmm. And I think because it is just one tense-filled moment or moments is why he had to make it so short.
It did give me a headache.
Did it really?
It did. I think it was a combination of the tension in the scenes, of some of the scenes where your a ship is going down or an airplane is sinking, or there's just you're drawn in, and he films it in such a way that you're like, are they gonna get out? Are they gonna get out? And then you got this music that's just. I mean, it's like a bagpipe that only has one tone the entire time.
It wasn't that bad.
Well, it works, but it's very irritating. It was tense. The whole thing was tense.
Yeah.
It was brilliant, but it was tense.
It was tense. It was supposed to be tense.
So what did you find? Did you like that?
I did, because here's why. Well, first of all, I love all his films. I would say The Prestige and Insomnia are at the one. They're not my favorites. They're good, but the other ones they're all brilliant to me. But here's a movie where in an hour and a half, there's almost no dialogue. Mm-hmm. Right. We never see the enemy. I mean, to the very end, like you actually see some German soldiers, but right. You're right. Opening scene, there's like 4 or 5 soldiers, and they're running through the streets towards the beach, and one by one they're getting gunned down, and only one survives, and that music is playing. They're discussing, and but you never see where it's coming from. There's no relationship. There's no face. It is ominous.
It kind of reminded me of Jaws.
Okay, yeah.
In the original Jaws, where if you know anything about the making of that film, they couldn't get the mechanical shark to work.
Right.
So they had to figure out, how do we create a tense action movie without ever seeing the shark? And they figured out with John Williams with that famous score, the music don't, and you just knew from the music that. And you never, until the very end, see the shark. So same thing. You don't see the Germans, but you feel the tension of everything that's going on.
Right. And a lot of it is because, one, the music is a big part of it. Two, the acting. Mm-hmm. Hitchcock was big on what he didn't show.
Right.
And so like a lot of times filmmakers today, they want to get... they want to show something specific because they have the technology to do it. Mm-hmm. And so when you can show everything or anything, a great filmmaker knows what not to show.
Right.
And so the fact that we never actually, I mean, we know it's the Germans, that kind of stuff, but because in this movie you actually never have a face, there's no creation of a monster or a bad guy. It's all in your head.
Right.
And that's what's so brilliant about him, is that he can create that through almost no dialogue and simple music and the expressions of these soldiers.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a little bit of detriment to not seeing the Germans.
How so?
After I saw it, there was an older guy in front of me, probably like 10 or 15 years older than you guys.
Older guy.
Yeah, really old.
Uh-huh.
And he turns around and he goes, "Do you know what this movie was about?" And I said, "Yeah, it is, World War II." And he goes, "Who were they fighting?"
No.
Oh my God.
And
no,
I said,
he didn't.
Yeah, he did. I said,
see,
the Germans? He goes, "Okay, see, I kept seeing the planes with the crosses, and crosses are good guys, right?" I was like, "No, that's the Germans." It is. He did not have any concept. He thought it was in Japan. He legitimately thought it was in Japan.
Well, isn't that more of an indictment of the American educational system than it is of Christopher Nolan's filmmaking?
Or the fluke.
Or how about this? Like, if you think you're fighting the Japanese, then why are there a bunch of English people trying to go 25 miles across the sea to England?
Because when did you see this movie? It was like middle of the day on a Tuesday.
No, it was opening night.
What town were you in?
Yorkville, Illinois.
There you go.
I'm not.
So, yeah.
All right. I really like the fact that you don't see the Germans for a couple of reasons. One is all the brilliant storytelling kind of framing that you mentioned and the tension, all that. The other side of it is I felt like it's so easy to just kind of, it's the Germans. Like,
right.
Yeah, okay, I get it. But I felt like what Nolan was trying to say in this film was the real thing these guys are escaping is not the Germans. It's war. Like war itself is this horrible thing, and it isn't like they were desperately trying to get away from the Germans. They just desperately wanted to get out of there.
Right.
And so it kind of transcended just this one event at Dunkirk in World War II. It kind of captured, there was something meta-narrative about the whole thing, about the human condition. And I'm getting kind of philosophical, but I like that aspect. Because if you particularize it too much, you don't apply it to other things. If that makes any sense. So, which leads me to my second proposal, which is I propose this movie, Dunkirk, is a good reason not to be a pacifist.
You propose this movie is a good reason not to.
It illustrates why I am not a pacifist. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
I have Christian friends who are pacifists. And
are you going to say what you are if you're not a pacifist?
Well, if you're not a pacifist, it means you believe that there is justified violence in the world.
Oh, okay. Is there a word for that? Like pacifist versus
non-pacifist?
All right. Go ahead.
A pacifist is somebody who doesn't believe a child should have a pacifier. A non-pacifist, I should say.
Right.
Anyway, but I mean, it's kind of become in vogue in certain circles to become a pacifist, like Christian pacifist, all that. And I know the Anabaptists and some others, and we've had friends on this podcast or on Phil's podcast who are pacifists, and I've been reading more and more on that. And I haven't studied it deeply since I was a seminary student, and people always go back to World War II, but it is a really great example of there is real evil in the world, and sometimes that evil needs to be contained and it needs to be restrained. And to think what would have happened had these soldiers or American soldiers or French soldiers or all the Allied armies had not resisted the Germans. So, you look at a movie like this and realize the sacrifices that were made, and it's hard for me to believe that shouldn't be honored or shouldn't be valued. So anyway, I'm not a pacifist. And I think this movie, if you're having those conversations, it would be good to sit down with people and watch this movie and then go, okay, let's talk about what is a Christian understanding of war. And I'm not saying all wars are justified. Many of them have been evil and wrong, but that one is pretty hard to disagree with.
So carry that further. So in the movie, because they weren't actually, they weren't being proactive. They were
retreating.
Right. They were retreating. Right. And a lot of the heroes were the heroes that were coming to rescue them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that they were attacking anyone per se. It was that they were putting their lives in danger to save someone.
There's a couple aspects. Number one, you had those civilians who were coming on their boats into warfare to rescue the soldiers.
They put their lives in danger.
A strict pacifist may not do that because you're participating in warfare. Okay, that's number one. Even though you're not actively killing, you're still participating in warfare. Secondly, one of the main characters of the film is known as the Mole at the beginning, and he...
Wait, that was a character?
No, that was what they were getting the boats on. That was called the Mole.
Was it called the Mole?
Yeah.
I thought he was known as the Mole.
No, the Mole was like it wasn't supposed to be a dock, but they turned it into a dock.
Oh, okay, got it.
Right.
Okay, anyway, there was that character who is basically a deserter. He's trying to... He's trying to finagle his way out of there by hook or crook, right? He's doing all kinds of nefarious things to get off that beach to save his own hide, rather than do it in an orderly way and kind of risk his life with everyone else. And you can see the cowardliness in that.
Yes.
And the refusal to do your part in what is... everyone's lives at risk here. Why are you better than everyone else? So you kind of have this juxtaposition between those who are willingly going into harm's way to rescue others and those who are desperately trying to get out of harm's way to rescue themselves.
Right.
And you got to step back and ask yourself, what's the more Christ-like posture? Right? Clearly, Jesus came and dwelt among us and rescued and suffered through this world and rescued us from evil. It's a rescue operation. Versus those who are just out to protect themselves. And I'm not saying all pacifists are cowardly. That's not true. Many pacifists, I think, are very brave and honorable people. But it's hard to look at all warfare as inherently unnecessary or opposed to what God would have us do. I think a case can be made that some war is necessary and has to be fought.
The character of the father and sons getting in the boats. They took their weekend, boat, that's not designed for warfare or crossing the channel.
Right, it's a pleasure boat.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. He goes and goes to rescue these soldiers. Along the way, they find a soldier in the water. They pull him out, and this soldier, all he wants to do is go back home, not go to Dunkirk. But no, the owner of this boat, the father, says, no, we got to go. And they have this discussion where he's like, it's the right thing to do. And he suffers a tragic loss. And he's kind of like juxtaposed to the soldier you were referring to, the coward.
Right.
Which is, I think, is great. I don't know how, I mean, this is fictional history, I guess. I don't know how many of these stories are actually happened, but that's one of the great things about this, that you can walk away from this film. And this is kind of to my point why I think he's such a great filmmaker, that, I mean, it opens with the coward, right? And at the end of the movie, this young boy is told, well done, and someone said, like, well done, all we did was survive. And they said, well, sometimes that's enough, right? And so you can end this movie, even with this guy with all his flaws, and he's a coward, that sort of thing, with this hope of or this sense of hopefulness or victory in a sense. But it's very gray. It's very nuanced, right? And then at the same time, you got this father who loses his own son, and he didn't have to. I mean, he could have just stayed home, right? And he was the brave one, and he ended up saving many lives.
Yeah. Well, and that's the movie shows people all along the spectrum. You do have the coward on one end. You have this brave father on the other end who voluntarily goes into this horrible mess, and then you have that other soldier who is rescued but doesn't want to go back to Dunkirk. He wants to go back home, but he's clearly suffering from PTSD. And the father acknowledges that, like, hey, this guy has seen horrible things. He's not in his right mind. It's understood. So you see the whole spectrum and recognize that this is what war does to people. And I mean, it's a beautiful movie. It's a brilliant movie. I really liked it. There were things that irritated me about it, like the music and the thing. I mean, but I have to agree with you. I think Christopher Nolan really is one of the best filmmakers we have out there.
Were you going to say something, Jason?
I was going to say about Cillian Murphy's character that you talked about. I think that's one of the best arguments about why nonlinear works for this movie, because you get to see him after you've already seen he's a broken person. He's been through a couple boats sinking at this point.
Right.
And you get to see him before when he's hopeful and he's optimistic.
Right.
And then you jump back to he wants to go home. He wants to get away.
There
are things like that.
High five.
Okay, fine. But I'm just saying, it got confusing when you're jumping around so much and you're like, okay, where am I now? And who's and then you're seeing the same events from different perspectives. And it's Christopher Nolan. And I knew going into this that he was going to do something funky like that.
Well, see,
he always does.
He does, and I didn't give it any thought, and because they introduce the mole one week, and then something else a day, and then something else an hour, and I was really waiting for more information, on the screen,
more cues of when you were, right?
Because it was jarring. Where I'm like, wait, that guy's flying a plane. Didn't he crash in the water a few minutes ago? But to me, what it did was, it pulled me into the story more, kind of like the Cillian Murphy example, where I'm like, oh, I see this is brilliant. I see what he's doing. Because if he told it linear, we would have missed out on a lot of I think you gave the best example. Is it Cillian? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, apparently Cillian is how Americans say it.
Yeah.
And he's British. It's Cillian.
Cillian, all right.
That's what I've heard.
I like that.
Cillian doesn't sound serious.
Cillian sounds a lot cooler.
That's right.
Yeah. But see, that's once again why I think he's a great filmmaker.
He is.
That he could, air, land, and sea? That was the three perspectives that he gave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More or less.
The land was a week.
As the mole.
And then the sea was a day, and the air was an hour. But that wasn't obvious. Like, you had to, because he doesn't treat you like you're stupid or unintelligent or a child. Like, you have to work when especially when you're thinking movies like Interstellar and Inception. Like, you really have to think.
The reality is, if Christopher Nolan makes a movie, I'm going to go see it.
Yeah.
That's that, and I don't say that about, I think, any other filmmaker. So
I will say one more thing about the music. Jason, I think, shared this with me. What was that called? The Shepherd's
Tone.
Shepherd's Tone.
Shepherd's Tone. So it describes how he can create, and I don't know that Chris Nolan came up with this. Hans Zimmer did the music, right?
Yeah.
Okay. where they create a crescendo, like the music just rising and rising. But it literally goes on forever. Like it can never end. And that's the whole point, that this tension is just building and building. And so you literally have an experience of this feeling, whether you like it or not. I mean, he takes you on this ride.
Yeah.
And they explain how they create it. And that was a YouTube video you shared for me. And so say Shepherd's.
The Shepherd's Tone.
Yeah,
Shepherd's
Vox
Tone.
did a video on
Yeah,
it.
I actually already have that in the notes.
Oh, okay, great. Check it out.
Something Borrowed.
Yeah. So Relevant Magazine has an article where they actually talk about Dunkirk several times, but this one where they talk about Christopher Nolan and his films, just how they, and what's interesting is they're saying how many Christians are drawn to his films. And so they go over different reasons and they pick out certain scenes and we can talk about that in a second. But the most obvious one that I think they left out was, the reason Christians are attracted to his films are Christians are people. And people really like good movies. Like he's good at making films, right? You know, and so there is a, I won't say the name of it, but there's a Christian production company that is churning out content right now. And like just movie after movie, they've got their Mad Max version, they've got their rom-com, they've got their dramas and their sequels, and now they have a sitcom.
Okay.
And what I appreciate about these artists is that they're making stuff, right? Oh, they should make. What churns my stomach is when I'm like, who is coming with these ideas to like pour all this money? Like you're going about the wrong way, right? You know, and it's like, to me, that's a big turnoff as a Christian. Where his films, I don't know that he's a Christian or not, are more of a turn on, and kind of like what you're saying, as Christians, what can we draw from these films? And so what he does is, so he talks about a couple of them. So the first one is Memento, right? And there's a quote in here. It says, memory can change the shape of a room. It can change the color of a car. Memories can be distorted. They're just an interpretation. They're not record. And they're irrelevant if you have the facts. And so that's when he would tattoo the facts on his arms, that kind of stuff. And so what they go on to say is he's talking about faith, is that this movie or that line, that scene manages to put the burden of faith on the unreliability of our own memories, not the idea of faith itself, but suggesting that facts are indeed important with faith when it comes to defending what we know and who we are.
That's more relevant today than ever, given our fact-free world.
Right.
Fake news and everything is a point of view.
And so I think a film like that, because I can watch Memento over and over and over again and see something different and just have a discussion about like, well, what is real? What do we really know? Is it what, you know, like, because, you know, my perception of God and Christianity has certainly developed as I've gotten older, you know, and changed in ways I would not have expected, you know. But the other one they referred to was The Dark Knight, and the line where the Joker is finally caught by Batman, and he says, like, you know, you can't kill me. You know, we're destined to do this forever, right?
Right.
It's the whole, what was that?
You complete me.
Well,
Jerry Maguire.
That's a good one. No, it's the one where it's the immovable force, immovable object, and an unstoppable force meet. You know, and it's the idea of good versus evil, and you know, what is that, right? You know, because it does seem like, because we always talk about we're going to end hunger, we're going to end war, we're going to end, but like
that idealism.
How long has that been going on?
Right.
You know, like it's
even
never
Jesus said to his disciples, "The poor will always be with you." Right. So yeah, we are in an age of idealism and sentimentality and activism, where we get so much of our identity from the idea that we're going to change the world, and something that needs to be sobered up a little bit.
Really? True. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think films like, when you can take a film about a guy dresses up like a bat and then have these actual discussions about, you know, good versus evil, or a guy who tattoos himself and say like, who are we? What do we know? Like,
I agree.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, let me ask you this. So, okay, so he made Inception, Interstellar, you know, the Dark Knight trilogy, Memento, Insomnia, The Prestige. What's one of your favorites out of those?
My goodness. I like all the Dark Knight movies, but the second one, the Joker one, is probably my favorite.
Of the The Batman movies
Of
or
the
of all of
Batman
them?
movies.
Okay.
Well, even it's way up there among all of them. For that, reasons you already mentioned about good and evil and chaos and all that. I just think it's brilliant. I've used that movie actually numerous times to talk about the problem of evil.
How so?
Oh gosh, just a tangent. But one thing I love that he did in that movie, and he's been interviewed about this, Christopher Nolan, is he gives no backstory to the Joker.
Yeah.
And every time somebody, or the Joker talks about how he got the scars on his face, he makes up another story.
Right. Brilliant.
So there's no, and then somebody asked him, why didn't you do a backstory for the Joker? Because all the other comic books have and the other Batman movies have. And he said, look, the Joker's to represent anarchy and chaos. And the moment you give him a backstory that explains where he came from, you're going to empathize, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah.
And he said that takes away from the chaos. And similarly, we philosophically debate, where did evil come from? Scripture doesn't say, right? I mean, you can, the serpent in the garden. Well, where did the serpent come from, right? The Scripture doesn't say. It's just not, the answer is never given to us. And to riff off of Nolan a little bit, I think part of the reason may be because God doesn't want us to empathize with evil in any way. We don't need to know where it came from or how it corrupted the world. The focus of Scripture is how God is going to overcome it. And we are called to focus on that rather than explaining it. And so it may not be intellectually satisfying, but it's actually more edifying to not know where it came from, because that way you're not going to empathize with it. You're just going to want to defeat it and destroy it and end it and clean up the world. So I think Nolan's films, my basic criteria for loving a movie is if the credits roll and my thought that goes through my head is, I could not have written that. Honestly, like if I could, I mean, I'm not a movie writer or a script writer, but I write, and I'm thinking, if I could not have written that, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a single one of his movies where I've been like, oh yeah, that was so paint by numbers. I totally
at all, right.
Not at all, not at all. So he makes you think, and beyond just being creatively told, they do delve into these deeper questions. And so we could spend 3 hours talking about Dunkirk.
Well, here's the thing. He takes something that's so complex, like dreams or time and space, or just the nuances of in the gray areas of war or whatever, and then he can get to like the heart of it, where everyone can relate to, like the father loving a child, or just fear, or
right.
And like in Batman Begins, the moment I loved that movie was his flashback as a child, and his dad's. It's literally like 3 seconds of film time where the dad's teaching him how to use the stethoscope. Is that right?
Stethoscope.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm in. Like, I'm like, this movie is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Because then I could buy into this guy dressed up like a bat and bad guys, and because like his dad loved him, and like you can relate to that, and then he can make this incredible movie. But anyhow, all right. I had another question, but I lost it, so we can.
All right, we got to wrap this thing up pretty soon. Something that blew your mind, a blue chunks that you have encountered recently.
Okay, I'm going to give two again.
Okay.
A blue chunks and a blue.
All right, cover your bases.
All right. Blue chunks. I finally saw Watchmen.
You never saw Watchmen?
I never saw Watchmen.
That's years back.
Yeah,
now.
I know.
Yeah. I don't think there's a single, what's his name?
Zack Snyder?
Zack Snyder film I've ever liked. So
I never saw 300.
I don't care. 300 is ridiculous.
No,
they're all ridiculous. I
just came across a streaming service. I saw it, and I was like, I haven't seen this, and I read a lot about it. I forgot everything I read. Like everything I read about it, it came back to me as I'm watching. Like, oh yeah.
All I know is there's like a big nuclear naked Smurf in it.
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, like was this necessary?
Yeah.
But
sounds like a grunge band.
Naked nuclear Smurf. Yeah.
I didn't like it. All right, but what blew my mind was Swallows and Amazons.
I've never heard of this.
I know. It just came out like at the end of last year, beginning of this year, 2017. It's very much like it'll remind you a lot of Narnia. 4 siblings, Britain during World War II, dad's off to war, mom's got the kids, and they go on a holiday somewhere. And they go on a little adventure to this island, like they get a boat, and mom finally lets them sail off and have a camping trip. And it's just the adventures they have as kids. And it's sweet. It's not, the best acting or cinematography, but it's just like, it's solid. It's enjoyable. The whole family, like I enjoyed it. My kids enjoyed it. Yeah. And if you like the Narnia tales, like you'll love this. It's definitely check it out. I saw it. It got 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
And we saw it. It was on a streaming service. I think we might have been iTunes. I don't remember where I saw it, but
All right. What's it called again?
Swallows and Amazons.
Swallows and Amazons.
Yeah.
Okay. I was really stressed out trying to think of something that I really hated or I really loved. And I don't have anything. I just have something that I'm open to having my mind blown by.
Oh.
But
The Emoji Movie?
no. Did you hear that? No.
6% on Rotten Tomatoes. 6.
It's gone up.
Oh.
What I really want to know about that one is as it goes international, will it actually make money? But whatever.
Anyways.
Okay, so I've been into like this. I've been up to my eyeballs over the last 6 months, maybe 5 months on colonial revolutionary America.
Oh,
So
why?
I read the Hamilton biography by Ron Chernow, which then is what the musical is based on. So then I went to New York with my wife, as we talked about. I saw the musical. Now I've been reading the George Washington biography by Ron Chernow, which is phenomenal. So I'm looking for something to watch on Netflix the other day, and there's that AMC show that's now streaming on Netflix called Turn.
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Isn't it? It's like he's like a double
Spy.
agent?
Yeah. So it's about a spy ring, basically, during
right.
the Revolutionary War. Some of it's based in fact. Some of it is purely fantastical, 21st century American
Did
television.
they have double agents?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I've been enjoying it. I'm certain a lot of it is not historically accurate, but it's enjoyable. I'm not having my mind blown by it,
right.
but I enjoy it. So if you're like into American Revolutionary kind of stuff, and in like this particular town where it's set, there are these British soldiers who are stationed, and most of the town are Tories. They're on the British side. Mm-hmm. They're colonists who are for the crown, and you kind of see the transformation over time of how the crown, the soldiers, the British, just shoot themselves in the foot. Like they turn more and more Americans against them by their own stupid decisions and behaviors.
Oh, okay.
And that I thought was kind of interesting to see. Like at the time of the revolution, I think the estimates were about a third of the population were patriots, about a third were Tories, and about a third were indifferent. And you kind of see how that indifferent middle turns to favor the patriot side because the British are so stupid in the way they manage that whole thing. So anyway, it's not blowing my mind.
How far are you into it?
6 or 7 episodes, something like that. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. Maybe a little mind is leaking a little out of my ear. So it's passing the time.
All right.
I'm enjoying that. So anyway.
Can I do a something blue real quick?
It better be good.
As Hans Zimmer's masterclass.
Oh, yeah. You went to that.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay.
He has episodes where he breaks down, like, here's why the Joker's theme is this. And it's 10 minutes of him just talking about, like, why this note is this way and why he tried to be the antithesis of what normal villain music is. And he does that for, Captain Jack Sparrow's theme. He goes through so many amazing things, talks about his theories behind everything. Every note is intentional with him.
Wow.
And it's phenomenal.
Masterclass.
Yeah, $90, totally worth it.
Okay.
If you like film scores, absolutely.
Oh, very cool. I might do that. Huh? All right. Okay, guys. So if you've seen Memento or Lost Boys, or you saw Dunkirk, or whatever, the Sparrows and Amazons and
Swallows and Amazons.
Sparrows, Swallows, whatever, and whatever I just mentioned, Turn. Give us your thoughts. Let us know what you think. Come back next time. Be sure to do a couple things for us. Number one, rate us on iTunes. Leave a review there. That actually helps other people find it. Share this on your social media. We'd love to grow our audience a little bit and get more people engaged. I just had my website rebuilt, and I'm hoping to get a page up there pretty soon where people can leave regular comments.
Oh, great.
On the podcast. But there'll be a bunch of new stuff coming out soon on my website. Please help me spread the word about my new book, What's Wrong with Religion?
Great
9
book.
Things No One Told You About Faith. Trying to burn through that first run so that we can actually do a second run of books, but I need to sell it that first run first. If you got a school, college, university, Bible studies, small groups, and you want to buy them in bulk, you can get them at a discount rate. So contact me about that, what'swrongwithreligion.com. Josh, anything you want to plug?
Well, Angie just finished your book yesterday, and she loved it.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. See, his wife likes something I made, but she doesn't like the movies that he likes.
That should tell you something.
All right. Until next time, you can kiss this episode goodbye.
We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Right.